PEC Match Point, your premier destination for news around the PEC. Week 1 is officially in the books, which means we've got highlights from across the league, major upsets. We're going to hear from Carson Cass later on in the show. It's going to be a ton of fun. It's all brought to you by the Idaho Air National Guard. As I said, we're going to go around the league, highlights from every single game in week number 1. A massive, well, I don't know if upset's the right word, but a massive win in Overwatch for Utah. Carson Cass will talk all about it. The Idaho Air National Guard going to be live in studio, and we'll look ahead to week number 2 in the PEC. There's some massive matchups that you're not going to want to miss. But we got to start with what happened last week as the spring season for PEC Rocket League is officially kicked off with maybe the most important game of the year. Syracuse and Michigan State entered the game separated by only 1 game in the standings for that vital 3rd seed, and 3 games later, Syracuse just has maybe established themselves as a legit threat for a PEC title. A sweep of last year's runners-ups, outscoring the Spartans 11-3 were Syracuse. And after a close game 1 where the Orange only won 2-1, they took over 4-2, 5-0. Your final scores in game 2 and 3. Gababy leads the way with 5 goals for the Orange. Lesser adding 14 demos of his own. Spartans will look to regroup if they want to keep 3rd place in their grasp. Boise State, they continue to dominate anybody in front of them. The Broncos picking up their 2nd straight sweep of the spring season, taking down Utah 3-0. A 12-goal outburst in Game 2 helped the Broncos outscore the Utes 19-3, 3-0, 12-2, 4-1 your final scores. Uzi and Dirtho both dropping 9-goal performances as the Broncos kept pace with Baylor atop the standings. For the Utes, they've had moments of brilliance in the series, but you got to play 5 perfect minutes to keep up with the top half of the PEC, and unfortunately for Utah, couldn't quite get it done. Much like the Broncos last week, Baylor kicked off their PEC spring season with a 3-0 sweep over Nebraska. The Bears defense allowing just 1 goal in the series. 4-0, 4-1, 4-0 were your finals. All 3 Bears members scored at least 3 goals, including Zadil got in on the action as a sub, picking up a trio of goals. For Nebraska, the Cornhuskers, they can kind of breathe easy. The toughest part of their schedule's out of the way. They're looking to regroup after a tough start in the spring. They've made some noise in these games. I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And Minnesota and Ohio State, it's our lone series that didn't end in a sweep as the Big Ten rivals played quite the opener. Ohio State, they won Game 1. Minnesota, who had a tough fall, they've made a lot of noise recently, battled all the way back and took Game 2 and put Ohio State on high alert.
Spot on that backboard. Taking the corner nicely, though, and there's not a whole lot of threat here on the side of Ohio State. A nice 50 down long. That might just fall in. Oh my goodness, it does. Rad again answers that call. What a fantastic 50 on the sidewall. Holds that drift button to get that touch of the wall, and then keeps sliding, just slimy like a snake on that sidewall.
It was a beautiful play, but actually.
Unfortunately, though, for the Gophers, wasn't quite enough. Bungo and Warpie both put in 5 goals for their respective teams, but Ohio State took care of business. As we see, this is how week 1 went down. Syracuse, the big game that we have to keep in mind, sweeping Michigan State. Boise State and Baylor kind of doing what was expected, their 3-0 wins. And then Ohio State, again, Minnesota gave them some issues. I think this is a scary Gopher squad. Kansas, they were on the bye. Let's take a look at how our standings look after everybody's played in week 1. Of course, remember, Nebraska and Boise State played week 0, so they're going to have an extra game over everybody else. But it's Baylor, Boise State at the top, 9-0, 9-1. But that 3 spot is very, very close now. Syracuse, tiebreaker percentage points ahead of Michigan State. Kansas is now right there as well. That 3 through 5, maybe even Ohio State, you see them down there at 3 and 6. That's going to be something to keep our eyes on as we move further in the spring. But it's time to move on to Overwatch and maybe the most talked about game this week in the PEC. It's a historic rivalry. We talked about it last week on our spring preview show. Boise State and Utah did not disappoint. An epic 5-game series to kick off week 1 of PEC Overwatch. A pair of Utes, PDKK and No Sam 4055 dropped over 100 kills. Boise State, they were down 2-0 at one point in this series. They rally all the way back, have the Utes on the chance of being reverse swept, but they held strong, did Utah, and this win's going to send ripples through the Overwatch standings. Boise State now dropping their 3rd game of the year, 2 games back out of first place, Syracuse and Ohio State. Suddenly, Utah's only a half game behind Boise State. Massive implications across the board. Joining us live now to talk about this Utah team is Carson Cass. Carson, we appreciate you coming on the show. Last week during the spring preview show, you were high on Utah, and they maybe seemed to justify your choice.
Thank you, Fish. And if you were watching last week, had a keen ear, you know what I said about this Utah squad in Overwatch. They are fantastic. They have championship pedigree, and they showed it here. Broncos can't do enough. They go down to the Utes 3-2, and what a matchup we had on Tuesday. This is a big kind of chess piece moving forward in this conference. Now they're really a championship contender. Can Syracuse and Ohio State beat them at this point? We'll see. They played really well on Tuesday.
Appreciate you joining, Carson. Yeah, I think you're right. We went from a 3-team race to a 4-team race. Going to be exciting to see how that goes forward. Nebraska and Baylor played as well. Both these teams just looking for that momentum springboard into the spring season, and Baylor picked up just that, a 3-1 win over Nebraska. This Baylor squad, even though maybe they're looking down at the lower half of the standings, they can make some noise. And again, end of the day, everybody's going to Vegas. Cannot wait to see what both these squads do there. And finally, ending up the week was Ohio State and Minnesota. Ohio State Overwatch, they've been going strong. A 3-0 win over Minnesota. The Buckeyes become the first team to hit 7 wins. And as we talked about last week, sweeps become even more and more important. We keep our eye on those tiebreakers. Rounds 1, map win percentage. Very key things to have. And when you hit 100% map win percentage in a week, you got to love that if you're Ohio State. For the Gophers, Minnesota, they had a very valiant effort on Kings Row. Kind of took Ohio State maybe to the brink of going to a 4th map. I think the Minnesota squad, kind of like Baylor and Nebraska, and going to be somebody to keep your eye on here. They might not have an impact in Vegas, but if they steal a map off somebody, they're going to change the way the whole season looks. Nobody can overestimate these teams. Now we move on to how the week looked as a whole in Overwatch. See what went down in week number 1. Again, as we talked about, at the top, it's Utah, it's Boise State. Massive, massive game there. Ohio State picking up the win over Minnesota. That 3-0 kind of matters. And Baylor picking up that 3-1 win over Nebraska. Kansas and Syracuse were off, but they've got big games coming up next week. Now we take a look at the standings. This is where things, they're not going to change just yet because Boise State has that extra game over Utah. They're ahead right now, but the difference is so slim. I believe it's a 6 difference in rounds where Boise State slightly holds the edge. Map win percentage is almost identical. We'll take a look at that next week once the Utes have caught up in games played. But that 3rd spot, all of a sudden, very, very close. Syracuse and Ohio State, you see there at the top, 7-1. The Orange were off, so they got some ground to catch up there. Moving on to Valorant, defending champs Michigan State kicked out the spring with a solid 2-1 win over Syracuse. A back-and-forth games 1 and 2. Spartans won the first one 13-10, then dropped game 2 13-8. But the champs made sure that game 3 was not close at all. A 13-4 win. 4 Spartans posting positive KDs. Lemur leading the way with a 28 masterpiece in game number 3 for the Orange. They've been up and down all year, but they've struggled to close out games as Michigan State did in this one.
Back, but the time is
gets the kill! The 1 HP Omen versus 1 HP Omen. Now it's stuck in a 1v2 situation. Stomp, you're getting nervous. Oh, stop. You think it's B? It is not B. It is A, buddy. There we go. Come on, go back A here. You got to fight here. Syracuse, 1v2.
He's going. That's going to give away of his positioning. Slouch now just has to live.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Absolute cinema there. 13.
The hero of the story.
Yep.
Ohio State, they continued their ridiculous run through PEC Valorant. Another 2-0 sweep, taking down Minnesota. And without Star Hamburger, the Buckeyes, well, they just looked just fine. 13-5, 13-7, your final scores in this one. All 5 Buckeyes across 2 games posted positive KDs. Dez led the way with 39 kills for Ohio State. For the Gophers, solid performance in game 2. Sammy 763 led the way, 17 kills for them. It just wasn't enough to stop this juggernaut Ohio State team, who picks up yet another 2-0 sweep. Baylor and Nebraska, they faced off. Baylor scoring their 2nd win in the PEC. They swept Nebraska 13-7, 13-5. Leno led the way for the Bears, a pair of 20-kill games. Absolutely massive final score, 50-26. All 5 Bears posting positive KDs. Cornhuskers, they look sharp in that first game. They pushed Baylor to 20 rounds, 18-kill performance by Geo Magic. But keep an eye on Baylor. This team has some very high-ranking players individually, and if they come together in the spring like I think they can, they might make some noise. Speaking of making noise, Utah nearly does it again against Boise State. They, for the 2nd time this year, took Boise State to a 3rd game. The Utes nearly pulled off their 2nd upset of the week over the Broncos, but they did fall 2-1. A 13-11 series banger kicked off with the Utes winning game 1. 3 of them posting 20 cool performances led by Superman. But Boise State They hunkered down and they rallied. They finish off the Utes 13-4, 13-9. They keep pace with Ohio State. Master leading the way for Boise State. 61 kills across the series. Absolutely heroic performance, and Boise State needed it most. As we take a look how week 1 in Valorant played out, as we said, sweeps pretty much across the board. So you get to that very last one. Michigan State, Ohio State, and Baylor picking up 2-0 wins, and Boise State with that 2-1 win over Utah. We look at the standings, not a lot of movement. Ohio State at 9-0, Boise State at 9-1, but dropping that map could be crucial if they want that 1 seed. Michigan State there at 7-2 with that Utah loss. Those top 3 schools kind of starting to pull away. Maybe going to be a 3-horse race here. We'll have to see. Speaking of Michigan State, though, as we move on to Smash, the Michigan State Smash team, one of the true, maybe the only true undefeated, as they have not dropped the map. They have not dropped the game, and that continues. They took down Syracuse 13-7, 14-7. Dice and Echo Fire won both their matches for the Spartans, while Druish and Suspect picked up 1 win of their own. For the Orange, Syrup continued his amazing play, a pair of wins for him, but it was not enough to overcome the #1 Spartans. Moving on, Minnesota and Ohio State. Minnesota entered the spring season in sort of this 3-way tie for 2nd place. They were able to sweep Ohio State, but the Buckeyes made them work for it. Game 1, kind of expected, 16-6 win for Minnesota, but then going into the final match of Game 2, the Gophers were down 10-7. Grizzhawk, a 4-1 win over Sea-Dude, forces a tiebreaker where Doug Todd took it over for the Gophers, a 4-1 win over Spoof. Kept them undefeated this week, a 2-0 win, massive for them. And Baylor and Nebraska. Nebraska came in to the day tied with Minnesota, dispatched Baylor with a pair of perfect rounds, 16-5, 16-6. Every single Cornhusker won their set for the Bears. They showed plenty of fight. They took some stocks off some of the best players in the PEC, such as Smoothie. Unfortunately, they're going to have to regroup heading into week 2 as we take a look how everything went down in Smash. Sweeps across the board, kind of from who you expected. Maybe thought Syracuse would make Michigan State reach that Game 3 for the first time all year. Wasn't meant to be. Minnesota and Nebraska pulling off 2-0 wins as well. Kansas and Boise State on the buys. And we take a look at our Smash standings here. Of course, Nebraska has that extra game playing Boise State in week 0, so that's why they've got the lead over Minnesota, but both those squads very strong. Syracuse now picking up that first loss, but again, if Michigan State beats Nebraska, Michigan State beats Minnesota, everybody through 2nd through 4th is going to have 3 losses. That schedule is going to, that standings, excuse me, going to be very, very tight as we get later on in the season. Kansas, Boise State, Ohio State, and Baylor wrap up the rest of it. We're going to take a quick break here on PEC Match Point. When we come back, the Idaho Air National Guard is going to join us live in studios to talk about what they're gaming on. It should be a lot of fun. Don't go anywhere. You're not going to want to miss it.
My friends know me as Derek, but I'm also Master Sergeant Raxter. This is my life in the Air National Guard.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back into PEC Match Point. As we talk about every week, it's brought to you by the Idaho Air National Guard. And joining me today, a pair of members from the Air Guard, Kelsey and Steven. We're so glad to have you guys on.
Yeah, we are too. Thanks.
We're talking about a video game show, so let's just start with the obvious. What is your relationship with gaming? Is it high-level esports like we talked about on the show? Is it just casual unk status that maybe we were talking about before the show? What is your guys' relationship with gaming?
Go ahead, Kelsey.
Yeah, so I started gaming back when COVID initially happened. I found myself at home, working from home, with a lot of spare time. And so I just started picking up Overwatch.
Okay.
And didn't know it at the time, but I eventually became highly addicted. And then I wanted to get kind of more into the competitive scene. And so I started, getting on teams and getting coaching and mentoring, and kind of went from there. And haven't continued to play Overwatch since Overwatch 2 came out, but kept playing a lot of other games since then. But
no, as for me, I'm a little bit older, so I started gaming my first time back in like 1995 when I was, 4 years old or so.
Dang.
On the original Need for Speed on my dad's first PC. Built my first PC in 2005 all by myself. And since then I drifted away from gaming for a little bit when I first joined, mostly because I was focused on other things. I got into racing cars and got into flying. So I'm a private pilot. That's what I do for fun. But just recently, since my kids are older now, I started getting back into PC gaming because it's something that my oldest son got really into, playing Minecraft. Right?
Nice.
It's a really good way to be creative and learn things, how to build things, which I, really support. So I built him his first gaming PC, and then it's been going on since then. So.
We love that. And what made you guys, the Idaho Air National Guard, big partner with Boise State. What made you guys so passionate about partnering with Boise State Esports?
Yeah, so one of the major reasons I wanted to reach out and partner with you guys is as I started playing games in the Air Force and I started getting into the gaming community, I realized how rich of a community it was and how passionate everyone is about their favorite game or whatever they do.
Yeah.
And so it's just such a fun group to be a part of and just a lot of genuine people. And so wherever there's gamers out there, I like to be involved with that community. I just love it. So.
You being in UNC status, I've kind of seen like through the years as gaming has become more accepting, in general society. Back when I was, first doing it, it was a lot of parents were saying, you're going to rot your brain playing on the computer all the time.
Yep, I remember that.
So now it's become a lot more accepted, and it really does build community. I made a lot of good friends online playing on the original Xbox 360, Halo 2 days when that first came out, Halo 3, and then you build really good relationships, and it's a good community. So there's a lot of military members that we have in our unit that also game. So everyone in our office, just the recruiting office alone, like we all game in some way, shape, or form. We game together. So, having this partnership with Boise State to also be around the esports community and support that, I think that's a really solid commitment right there.
And speaking of it, you mentioned that everybody in recruiting office of the Air Guard plays. Do you guys have teams? Is there a tournament you guys can play? And is there sort of like an esports scene for the Air Guard almost?
So there's kind of a casual scene, and then there's a little bit more of a competitive scene you can join. It's called Air Force Gaming, and so whenever you enlist into the Air Guard, active duty, or reserves, you can participate in Air Force Gaming, and it's casual and up to making your own teams, and then competing against other bases and competing against other DoD branches as well. So it's pretty fun.
Is it how much bragging rights are on the line when it comes to competing against other branches?
I'd say a lot.
Is it very serious?
Yeah. But I'd say the Air Force is probably the most competitive when it comes to that.
Air Force and Space Force, they're kind of
rule the scene. Yeah.
And now let's kind of unplug a little bit. Just talk to us a little bit about what you guys do for the Air Guard and what makes potentially someone who maybe is hearing this and on the fence, maybe the Air Guard, a phenomenal career opportunity for them.
Yeah, so one of the biggest benefits we have to offer is we're flexible. It's a part-time service, so it's going to be 3 days out of the month, 8 months out of the year, with a lot of benefits that come with that, right? So we have education benefits such as $8,000 annually for tuition assistance, and that can be used in any higher-level education for the state of Idaho, even if you wanted to branch out and get your private pilot's license, right, or go to Boise State, for instance. And so that's a major benefit there, and then you obviously have a lot of free time given that it's part-time to do things that you love, like game, go to school, have a career on the outside as well.
Yeah, like I said, flexibility is huge, and that's something that I think a lot of my generation and then also Gen Z appreciates. We don't like to be worked to the bone every day. It's important to have your breaks.
Yep.
Get your free time in there. That's something the Air Guard does afford you. I did a lot of things, all at different points in my life, but also a lot of different things all at one point in my life, right? Like I said, I game, I fly planes. This is my full-time job as a recruiter, and it also affords me like the things that I like to do, the things I like to purchase and stuff like that. It's a good living, right? While still be able, like even if you stayed part-time status and you were just a drill status guardsman, you can still pursue the career that you want to pursue on the outside. You could still be working here at BSU and then come out for that 1 weekend a month drill weekend, right? So really cool in that regard.
That's awesome. And then you kind of answered this question, Kelsey, so maybe there's a little bit more, but how you mentioned how there's, when you sign up, you can be part of the gaming community. So what does that look like if somebody's like, look, I really love Overwatch or I really love Rocket League, and they want to be a part of that community when they sign up for the Air Guard? How do they make sure they check the right boxes to be able to participate?
Yeah, all they have to do is basically go onto airforcegaming.com, make an account, and then they'll gain access to the Discord. And in the Discord, you can find your base, you can find your region, and you can start gaming with people from across the country and across the globe, right? So when I was stationed in RF Lakenheath in England, I actually was on a team in the U.S.
Oh, that's cool.
With a bunch of other people in the military. So there's a lot of different opportunities out there. Super easy to find your little space in your game. You just go to the game that you play, and there's going to be people who play it as well, and you just link up with them.
And then final question. I mean, you guys kind of talked about what started you. What's your favorite game right now? Like, what are you playing the most of right now?
Yeah, so I'm playing a lot of Hearthstone Battlegrounds.
Okay,
it's
all
just
right.
I can play it anywhere. I love it. It's just a fun game, super simple, and the duos is a lot of fun. So yeah, that's what I've been playing. And Expedition 33.
Oh, that's a good
just
game.
started that.
That's
so,
a good game.
Yeah, it's a little cliche, but being game of the year and the 9, well now 8 awards that it won. Yeah, that was one of my favorites too. But currently, I just finished the campaign or the story in Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Nice.
And now I'm going through Rebirth. I kind of had those on the back burner for a little bit, going through those right now. And then also squeezing in a little bit of Arc Raiders on there too.
Nice. Well, Kelsey, Steven, we appreciate you guys joining us. Appreciate you helping us bring PEC Match Point to the people every single week. And we're not done because we got to look ahead to week number 2 in the PEC. We've got some massive games coming up. You're not going to want to miss. Big matchups across the board. We'll bring you all the previews coming up next on PEC Match Point.
My friends know me as Derek, but I'm also Master Sergeant Raxter. This is my life in the Air National Guard.
Welcome back into PEC Match Point. Big shout out to the Idaho Air National Guard joining us again. They help make the show possible every single week. But if you want more from around the Power Esports Conference, head over to the official PEC website for everything you need. Power rankings, predictions, analysis on some of the biggest matchups of the season. Stay informed, stay connected, and stay ahead with all things PEC. Head on over to pec.leagueos.gg for more information. It's time to look ahead to week 2 of the PEC. Everybody's gotten action except for Kansas. They had the bye last week as we kick off with Rocket League. And this very quickly for Michigan State has become a do-or-die game as the Spartans, coming off a 3-0 loss to Syracuse, they get number 2 Boise State. It's a rematch of last year's national championship where the Broncos came up on top. And all of a sudden, the Spartans pick up a 4th loss. Now all of a sudden you see Kansas down there. This will be a tough one. Boise State, they're 9-1. They're looking to keep pace with red-hot Baylor. The Spartans don't even want to think what could happen with a loss. Speaking of Baylor, fresh off their win over Nebraska, they're going to take on Utah at 2-7. The Utes looking to make a big statement, maybe slow down the Bears. Again, Baylor kind of got their biggest revenge out of the way. Remember, Nebraska had a surprising result against Baylor last year. Didn't happen this week. Again, who can stop the Bears? That question becomes harder and harder to answer every single week. For Utah, a win would be massive, but you take a game or 2 off of Baylor even, I'm not a big moral victory guy, that's a massive confidence boost. Should be a fun one to watch. Kansas, they get their first action in the spring. As we said, they were off last week. They'll take on a Nebraska squad. Kind of hoping to finally get a breath of fresh air. You play Boise State and Baylor back-to-back. Now you get a chance to maybe get into that meatier part of the schedule, maybe pick up a win or 2. Kansas, they're only 2 games behind Michigan State. They win this, the Spartans falter. All of a sudden, the 4 seeds may be in play for them. Should be a lot of fun. Curious to see how well Nebraska can play against this Kansas squad. And Ohio State and Syracuse, they're going to wrap up the week. The Orange had that big statement win that we just talked about earlier in the show against Michigan State. They cannot afford a letdown, though. Everybody in the PEC is talented. You don't want to all of a sudden give up that win you just picked up. The Buckeyes, they had a win against a rowdy Minnesota squad last week. Could be a great building block. Maybe get a chance to show what they can do against some of these teams in the middle of the pack and maybe challenge for a title in Vegas. Minnesota, by the way, is on the bye. Moving on to Overwatch. Utah, fresh off that massive win over Boise State, will look to build up against Baylor. The Utes are only percentage points behind Boise State for that 3rd spot tiebreaker, so a sweep here has massive implications. For Baylor, there's been plenty of bright spots in the fall. Now they have a chance to prove that break was what they needed to maybe kind of turn the corner and maybe have a statement win of their own against Utah. Kansas going to face off against Nebraska. The Jayhawks find themselves in a very, all of a sudden, crowded middle of the field. Utah, Boise State is there. Remember, Kansas beat Boise State in the fall. That's going to be a fun game coming up here in a few weeks. They take down the Cornhuskers. It's a vital game that they have to win if you're Kansas, if you want to stay in the mix for that top 3 spot in Vegas. For Nebraska, You had a great battle against Baylor where they couldn't quite get it done. I think this is a chance, much like for Baylor, to kind of prove yourself if you're Nebraska early on in the spring season. And maybe early contender, by the way, for Game of the Year in the PEC for the spring at least. It's Ohio State and Syracuse battling it out for basically a chance to establish yourself as the favorite for the #1 seed. With Boise State falling, there's a 2-game gap between yourself and third place if you're Ohio State or Syracuse. Winner of this has the inside track for the top seed at Vegas. Last time Ohio State kind of blew the Orange away. Coming off a bye, though, for Syracuse, they're fully prepared. This is maybe the must-watch game of the week, especially if you're an Overwatch fan. Moving on to Valorant, Boise State and Michigan State. A massive matchup for these two teams. The Spartans, the defending national champs, lost to Boise State in the fall, and a loss here kind of maybe eliminates them from a chance at a top 2 seed. Boise State looks basically unstoppable, and so does Ohio State. I don't see, if you're Michigan State, if you have 3 losses, how you can catch back up. This is must-win territory already, which feels crazy to say in week 2. Boise State, we've talked about it. We're going to hammer it home a lot. They've got to pick up a sweep here to keep pace in the tiebreaker categories with Ohio State. Dropping a map to Utah was huge. If you want to dethrone Ohio State and get that 1 seed, you almost need a sweep here. Baylor, they picked up their 2nd win of the year last week, hoping to build on that against the Utah team. Came just short of upsetting Boise State. Utah's sort of that middle ground. If you're below Utah, maybe you've got some work to do. If you're above a Utah, you're a national championship contender. So this is a great chance for Baylor, who has a lot of strong individual performers in the fall, to kind of prove they're going to be a problem heading into Vegas. Meanwhile, for Utah, Michigan State loses. Now all of a sudden you're within striking distance. Kansas and Nebraska, they're going to meet up. It's Kansas' first action of the year, coming off a bye last week for the Cornhuskers. A tough loss last week to Baylor after really a strong start in game #1. Should be kind of a great proving ground match for both these teams, as the Jayhawks kind of looking to find their footing after an up-and-down fall, and Nebraska is trying to start the spring on the right spot. And Ohio State's reign of terror, it's going to continue until somebody slows them down. They take on Syracuse. The Orange, very tough start to the fall. Then they picked up a small winning streak, kind of brought back some hope. They're at 3-6. Can they become the first non-Boise State squad to take a map off of Ohio State? The title right now, I hate to say it, it appears to run through Ohio State. If you want to compete in Vegas, you need to prove you can take down Ohio State in the regular season. Syracuse has a great chance to do that, or will Ohio State's run of dominance continue? And wrapping up the week is Smash. Michigan State, they're the lone perfect team, as I talked about. They're 8-0 overall, 16-0 in maps. They're going to take on a Boise State Smash team, just trying to put the fall behind them and rally. The Broncos, they made some noise against Nebraska in that Week 0 game. The Cornhuskers are in 2nd place. This would be a great chance. You take a map off of Michigan State. You let everybody know you're going to be a force to be reckoned with. The records don't really matter, so it should be a lot of fun there. Nebraska and Kansas, they're going to meet up as the Cornhuskers look to continue what has been a strong start to the spring season. Pair of 2-0 wins already under their belt, with 2nd through 4th place in the standings separated by only 1 game. Every single matchup counts. You cannot afford a misstep. Kansas, again, the Jayhawks had a bye last week. Going to be curious to see what they bring into the spring coming off the fall, where, again, up and down. You see the record 3-4, some good wins, some not so good losses. Going to be curious to see what Kansas can do. And Syracuse and Ohio State, they're going to battle it out to close out week 2 in the PEC. The Buckeyes took 3rd place Minnesota into a tiebreaker, nearly forced a game 3 against them, just couldn't quite get it done. So Syracuse has got to be on their toes. They just got taken down by top-ranked Michigan State. This is going to be a fun series. PEC Smash has probably been our closest title. There's 4 teams in contention right now. Maybe Kansas, maybe Ohio State makes some noise. I wouldn't be too surprised if this series maybe goes the distance. Week 2 in the PEC is set to be up a lot of fun. As we said, we've got Syracuse taking on Ohio State. Overwatch between these two teams is a must-watch game for every single person in the PEC. Kansas and Nebraska, this one will be a lot of fun. Some epic, historic rivalries between these two. I think those are going to be some fun games. Boise State taking on Michigan State, Rocket League, Valorant. Both these teams are in 2nd and 3rd place. This could be do or die for Michigan State, and Utah taking on Baylor. I think the Utes really trying to prove themselves across the PEC. If they maybe make some noise against Baylor Rocket League, could be very telling. Week 2, as I said, it's shaping up to be an exciting week. We've already got what feels like do or die games. So make sure you join us next week. You caught up on all the action around the league here on PEC Matchpoint. And don't forget, head over to pec.leagueos.gg. Stay up to date. PEC Matchpoint. It's brought to you by the Idaho Air National Guard. Big shout out to them for joining us in studios. Big shout out to Carson Katz breaking down that crazy Overwatch game. Good luck, everybody. If you're in the Northeast, the Midwest, stay safe. There's some crazy snow. Stay inside, play some video games, and we'll see you all next week.